Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1989 movie Uncle Buck. Now, Uncle Buck was written, directed, and produced by John Hughes. It was also produced, in the production staff includes Tristan Rogerson Dolly and Tom Jacobson. It was distributed by Universal Pictures. The score was done by Ira Newborn. The cinematographer was Ralph Bode. It was edited by Lou Lombardo, Tony Lombardo, and Peck Pryor. And it stars John Candy, Macaulay Culkin, Jean Louisa Kelly, Gabby Hoffmann, Elaine Bromka, Amy Madigan, Garrett M. Brown, and Laurie Metcalf. Now, Uncle Buck is a wholesome family film that was written and directed by the late John Hughes, who steps out of his parameters of teen comedies in the 80s, such films like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, and has took his step into a new direction in more light fare comedies. And once again, he casts John Candy in his second collaboration. His first one was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin. John Candy steps in as the bumbling but lovable slob named Uncle Buck, who reluctantly but graciously decides to watch over his brother's 3 children, while he and his wife, played by Garrett M. Brown and Elaine Bromka, go to Indianapolis to attend her father, who has suffered a heart attack. Uncle Buck has found the approval of the 2 younger siblings, Miles and Maisie, played by Macaulay Culkin and Gabby Hoffmann, but is in a constant battle zone with his eternally bitter and moody oldest niece, Tia, played by Jean Louisa Kelly. She's the typical rebellious teenager who's going through this stage of her life where she just wants to be independent and doesn't want any adults to deprive her of her happiness, let alone Uncle Buck, and is currently in a relationship with an obnoxious punk who goes by the name of Bug, played by Jay Underwood. Now, this was, of course, the pinnacle film for Macaulay Culkin, who would later become one of the top-grossing kid stars from 1989 up until 1994, when his bravado faded out. One of the moments that evolved around Miles Russell, and this was a memorable scene, there was lots of memorable scenes in this movie, was when he started trivializing Buck with personal questions, and Buck responds with quick passive-aggressive responses. And then, it ends with Macaulay Culkin saying, "You have more nose hairs than my father does," and Buck would be like, "Well, that's nice of you to know. I'm a kid. That's my job." Gabby Hoffmann, who also went on a subtle movie career after this, including her affectionate performance in the Kevin Costner vehicle Field of Dreams, was also very charming as the equally intelligent Maisie Russell. But the 2 characters that are the centerpiece of this film are the performances from John Candy and Jean Louisa Kelly, who plays the angered Tia. Now, one time I couldn't really stand, when I was young, I couldn't stand the character of Tia Russell. I'm sorry. But I used to one time dismiss her and thought of her as being probably one of the ultimate teen bitches in movie history. And I kind of found it at times very hard to sympathize with her because of her perpetual moodiness and her somewhat sarcastic undertone whenever she spoke. It just made me cringe. But as I got older, I started to understand her. I mean, who wasn't going through this phase in life? I'm sure everybody went through that cycle. And And maybe some people still continue to live their lives like this. But she was just going through a phase. And it's easy to just, dismiss her. But you got to understand something. She went through this. And if she did everything you can to piss her off, if she did everything you can to piss you off, then I guess she must have done her job really well. I mean, she pissed me off when I first saw it in theaters 25 years ago, but not so much anymore. I've come to understand what she was going through. I went through that phase myself. And one of the remarkable things I liked about Buck is that, he can actually understand her psyche that seems rather blind to her parents. I mean, she had this chip on her shoulder to her parents, especially towards her mother, and she claims that the reason why she turned into a bitch was because of the move from Indianapolis to Chicago. Because of, I believe it was her father had a promotion. So, because of the move from a new city to a new environment, it just did not sit very well towards her approval, and that's why she had the chip on her shoulder. But I don't think she was only just mad at her mother. I don't think she was just mad at, because of the fact that Buck was kind of a bit of an embarrassment to the family, much alone to her chagrin. But I think she was just genuinely mad at the world. Because it seems like it wasn't just her mother and Buck that she was pissed off about. She was practically angry at everyone. Maybe she was even practically mad at herself. I mean, we all went through this cycle. It's just something that we've experienced. I went through that when I was 15, 16 years old. A moody, angry person. I was mad at my mother and father too. I was mad at my siblings. But, you overcome that. We're all resilient to that kind of stage in life. I'm sure even my own parents too also had stages of rebellion. It's normal. But the thing is about Uncle Buck, too, getting back to him, he also strangely knows what's going through the cranium of her boyfriend, Bug. When he tells Tia that Bug is just using her just to get a little sex, he tells her that the reason why he knows about what's going on through Bug's mind because Bug was the character that Buck was at one time. And the thing is the one thing that I liked about Uncle Buck was that he wasn't afraid to humiliate Tia in any way possible, even in front of her friends, just to make his point clear. And by the end of the movie, she learns her ways and realizes that he's not as dumb as he looks, and she also tries to repair his estranged relationship with his girlfriend who runs an auto shop named Shanice, played by Amy Madigan. What Tia did, she did something really underhanded by pulling off a fib that Buck was having a relationship with their next door neighbor, who's kind of a sex-craved, nosy neighbor named Marcy Dalgreen Frost, played by longtime comedic actress Laurie Metcalf. So she tries to repair a manipulative scheme she pulled off of Buck as a way to apologize for her rebellious ways. And when her mother and father come home, she gave her a big hug and said that, she was going to change her ways and that things were going to be different and that she was no longer going to be the rebellious kid. And when Buck and Shanice go back to Chicago, they Buck and Tia engage in one last goodbye, and said that one of these days he would like to join her for a cup of coffee to see how things have progressed between her in her life, and that he wanted to still be a part of her life, maybe even, and also of course to the kids too, to see how they're doing. You know, maybe even sort of be like a second father. Buck seems to, of course, provide, great solid entertainment to the younger kids, which is actually even more than the parents could provide. They seem like a couple of busybodies who seem more interested in their own jobs and their own lives and don't really have much time for even the younger kids, Miles and Maisie. And one of his ways of entertaining the kids, he surprises Miles and Maisie at Miles's birthday, and there was this big stack of pancakes. So, so to celebrate Miles's birthday, they have a huge pancake feast. He also confronts a drunken clown who could barely raise his fingers to reach the doorknob. And Buck also has the amazing talent of multitasking and to handle any problem with just the snap of his fingers. And even when, Buck becomes kind of a little on the snarky side, you just gotta love him just because John Candy, to me, was a big, soft, lovable teddy bear. He even had a certain edge to him, sort of like other clowns from the silent film era. When he's verbally abused and put down by people, you just want to hug him because he's just truly the uncle you would love to have because of his warm, affectionate demeanor. He is definitely had provide a lot of funny dialogue for him, and he will stop at nothing to defend his family's honor, including a memorable scene where Buck goes to Maisie's school and confronts her principal, who sports an ugly mole on her chin, and when she tells Buck that Maisie isn't at the same pace as her other students, Buck passively aggressively says that I don't want to hear any of your lip, and then he ends the conversation by telling her to get a rat to gnaw that ugly mole off her chin. As the 1980s kind of came to a close, Uncle Buck was a memorable John Hughes film. It also carried a character that comes closest to the real character that John Candy was. It made Macaulay Culkin the most watchable child star of the 1990s. And of course, the other notable performances, Amy Madigan was also quite effective in her role as Shanice, who also seemed to can't put up with Buck's immaturity. And Laurie Metcalf, who plays the role as the next-door neighbor, Marcy Dahlgren Frost, she also turned in a stunning performance. Who can forget the memorable scene when he was trying to stuff clothes into the washing machine and was struggling, and Marcy thought that he was in the room having sex or even just giving himself a good wanking. Who knows what he was doing in there, but it was really, really, really effective. There was a lot of memorable scenes, and I feel just so guilty giving away spoilers. But Uncle Buck, he can be a real person too when you think about it. If you have an Uncle Buck in your family, consider yourselves one of the lucky ones. Okay, maybe he wasn't perfect. Okay, maybe he drank and smoked cigars and did gambling on horse races. He wasn't perfect, but he is the perfect person to have as a guardian. And it turns out in the end that he was a very reliable person. And, he was just a lovable guy. John Candy was a lovable guy. Even after 20 years, I still miss him. And I think this is the end of my writer review. So if you have any comments, please feel free to write. Remember, be kind, be courteous, and I will be back with another review. Until next time, this is Eric Ryder saying, keep watching those movies, and good night, everyone.